Everybody. I want to welcome you all to the first FMQ Advisory Board meeting for 2023. I hope everyone had an enjoyable holiday season and a good new year so far. Julie is going to call the roll call in a bit, but I first want to remind everyone to please mute your microphones whenever you're not speaking. And it's unnatural, but please announce your name before you say anything, just so your comments can be properly recorded. Julie?
Yes, sir. Good morning. And the time is 10:02 a.m. And we're going to call roll. Keisha Esqueda,
Present.
Board meeting for 2023.
Terry
hope
Maxey?
everyone had a
Present.
Nathan Winkelman,
Present.
Terry Hara,
Present.
Carlos Garza,
Present.
Zeth Stevens,
I'm here.
Adam Thompson,
Present.
Wes Nance, I know Mr. Nance is here.
I'm sorry, I'm present.
That's all right. Jason Harris, presiding officer,
present.
and ex officio members Stephen Skurlock
I am here.
and Jeff Headley. Okay, I don't see him. And we do have a quorum. Thank you.
Thanks, Julia.
Mhm.
Board member, there's two sets of minutes to approve, February 7th and October 5th of last year. I first asked if any board members have any comments regarding the February 7th minutes. If not, I ask for a motion to approve those minutes as written.
Make a motion. Second.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, who made the motion and who second?
Terry Hara made the motion. Carlos Garza second.
Same deal for the October 5th minutes. Anybody have any comments on those minutes as written?
May I do the roll call for the February 7th?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. Keisha Esqueda,
Present.
Terry Maxey? Do you approve the motion?
I'm present. Are you doing a roll call again or what?
No, sir, we're doing a roll call vote on the motion to approve the minutes of February
Oh, I'm sorry.
7th. That's
Yes, they're approved, right? Yes.
Nathan Winkelman,
Yes.
Terry Hara,
Present approved.
Carlos Garza,
Yes, approved.
Seth Stevens,
Approved.
Adam Thompson,
Approved.
Wes Nance,
Approved.
and Jason Harris, presiding officer.
Approved.
Motion passes.
All right, you'll get to repeat that fund for the October 5th minutes. Anybody have any comments? Okay, then I would ask for a motion to approve those minutes as written.
Wes Nance, I move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Who was the second?
Nathan Wickelman.
Thank you. Do if you do a roll call on that, please.
Okay. Keisha Esqueda,
Approve.
Terry Maxey,
Approve.
Nathan Winkelman,
Approved.
Terry Hara, Mr. Hara, do you approve?
Yes, I approve.
Thank you. Carlos Garza,
Yes, I approve.
Seth Stevens,
I approve.
Adam Thompson,
I approve.
Wes Nance,
I approve.
and Jason Harris, presiding officer.
Approved.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Now, some reminders on open government. And I think Jessica's going to share with us some training.
Yes, good morning, Chair and members. I'm going to be sharing with you a refresher. You all have had this training before, but you all are required to do it yearly. So we're going to be doing that again today, and it'll be brief, concise. You've got a lot of business ahead of you. So I'm going to share my screen so we can get that started. And all right, can you all see the slides this morning?
Yes, I can.
Yes. All right. So Jessica Escobar, Chief of Staff, and we will be going through our advisory board training this morning. So you all have done this, you know the rules, you are currently in an open meeting, and so you all know what to do and not to do. So of course, we're going to go over the Open Meetings Act, the Administrative Procedures Act, and Public Information Act. So Open Meetings Act, why is it in place? So it's to ensure open and transparent government, make sure the public has access to the open meetings and knows what the government is doing. So all meetings that governmental bodies have must be open to the public, accessible, and we've got to have notice in advance of those meetings of when, where, and what's being discussed. So you always have those things construed liberally and in favor of open government. So what is a quorum? And you'll hear us talking about this a lot. We've discussed it this morning. A quorum is a majority of members of the advisory board fixed by statute or rule. And then you've got to have that quorum in order to take action. So the quorum of the governmental body has to be met in order to take those actions. If you don't have the quorum, you can meet, but you can't take any action. So you're having the quorum together to have a deliberation, means you're talking either in a in-person, verbally, in person, we're gonna talk about that. You're meeting technically in person, or you're having a written exchange. So we're talking about emails, we'll get to that later, but written exchange also counts. So a quorum of the governmental body that's discussing something within your purview. So you're talking about rules or something related to the fuel industry that you have authority over. So you're having a meeting. So anytime that you've got a quorum talking about your business that you can take action on, you've got a meeting in place. So we've got to have notice whenever we've got an open meeting. You've got to, we have to post the date, the time, the location of the meeting, and what is going to be discussed. So we've got to have all of this in the form of an agenda. We post these as TDLR on our the Texas Secretary of State website. We do this 7 days in advance of every meeting. That's a requirement. We also do that on the TDLR website so that we have people have access to that. The other thing we do, and for you all, you'll notice we send those out in advance as well by email. So if it's not on the agenda, we cannot discuss it. So somebody might bring something up during public comment. It's a really great discussion point, but we can't engage. You all can't engage at that time. There may be something you want to discuss during the meeting. Mary will jump in. She always does a fantastic job and will remind you that's something we can't discuss at this time, but in the next meeting, we will add this to the agenda. So please, let's table that for now. So what about outside of the meeting world, or you're not here with TDLR? Obviously, you all have conventions, workshops, you get together outside of this. We know that, and that's fine. You don't have to worry about meeting together. So meetings, of course, happen when you're together in a group. Can you continue to meet without violating Open Meetings Act? Of course, you can do that. However, you've got to avoid discussing board business in that quorum and taking actions, making decisions. So again, we're talking about quorum, taking actions in board, talking about board business. So key things to remember, just be mindful of when you're engaging with other board members and what you're discussing. So what's a walking quorum? We talked a little bit, I mentioned those email discussions, walking quorum. That means when you guys are walking together and you've got members discussing that official business and you kind of go off in the world of, okay, we started here and now we happen to be talking about the rules, and it kind of went beyond the realm of what should be happening. So it maybe started with a couple members and those couple members were engaging, and then those couple members or one of them forwarded that discussion item to somebody else. So now that couple of members added on, and so then somebody else made a phone call. So now you've got that number growing to where you're expanding outside of what wasn't a quorum into a quorum, and that's called a walking quorum. And you want to avoid that because then you start getting into violation of Open Meetings Act. So we basically just went over that. So what can walking quorums be? Conference calls, video conferences. You just happen to be talking in the hallway. The big one is those emails and texts. And now you've got issues with, for example, Facebook and Twitter. Those are a little bit more extreme, but the big one is email. So we start talking about something and we're talking about rules, or you guys email each other with questions and something comes up. Once it turns into a phone call and you're talking to another member, you forward an email to somebody else, that starts the chain of tacking people into that discussion, creates the walking quorum. The unique thing now is we have social media, right? So you may be posting something on Facebook, completely innocuous. You're not even polling, you're just putting in an opinion about something. And then you've got other people commenting. They may be members of the board, and that can turn into a quorum, whether you intended to or not. So you've got to be really cautious about how those discussions go on. So what are things that you can do to avoid the walking quorum? Doesn't mean you can't engage with your fellow board members, but you've got to try and meet in small groups. And if you do meet in groups, don't discuss board business. We've got rules ahead of us. Don't discuss the rules. That can absolutely lead to walking quorum issues or quorum issues. So if you're sending emails or have any other official board business, go through our advisory board team. That is the best way to avoid any issues. If you need something, send it to our advisory board email. They will disseminate any information out to you all, and it'll be by BCC. And that way, any replies will go directly to them. You avoid that copy all. The discussion can avoid inadvertently going to everybody. The other thing is those social media posts that I discussed. They can possibly turn into a chain, and you want to avoid that as well. So open sessions, we talked about those a little bit. You want to have those in, you want to have an open dialogue during meetings. We absolutely encourage those, and that's how we have open meetings. But we've got to stay on track with the agenda. So sometimes you'll have me popping in, you have Mary jumping in and saying, board, we appreciate the conversation and discussion. However, we're going a little off topic of what's listed here. We've got to pull back. Not that we don't want to hear from you all. We are not discouraging the discussion, but if it's not on the agenda, we may risk violations of open meeting, and we need to table it for another time. So there's reasons that we want to do that, right? And we'll talk about those later. And so we just need to make sure that we provide notice to the public about what we're discussing. So why, I mentioned we want to avoid violations. Why would you do that? Somebody can seek a civil remedy for those discussions that go kind of off agenda, right? So if, for example, you start talking about something off the agenda, and what's more, if you take action on it, if somebody was really interested, they could file with the courts to take action. What does that mean? If you took action on that item, they can seek to declare it void. So if you voted on some rules or you voted on something else and it wasn't on the agenda, they can seek to have that item voided. Or there's criminal penalties. This goes more to your walking quorum. So if you're out there and you're knowingly meeting together and talking about business or you're having closed door meetings and somebody finds out, they can seek to have criminal penalties filed against you all. So these can go from a fine all the way to jail or both. So you obviously want to avoid having those issues. So best practices, avoid those quorum violations and stick to the agenda. You don't have to worry about that one because you've got us to keep you on track with that one. So we've got some resources for you, and if you have any questions, reach out to us. We're happy to help. Administrative Procedures Act. This is something that we're going to be talking about this morning. You've got rules ahead of you. Rules is a big thing that we handle here at TDLR. We have a lot of rule packages rolling through our agency every single year. And it's something we're really proud of. We have great attorneys that work on them and a great team of legal assistants that help support us. So what is the Administrative Procedures Act? It's out there to establish minimum standards to help state agencies through the rulemaking process. Again, bottom line is transparency to make sure the public is involved and they know what's happening in the rulemaking process. So a rule is something that interprets, implements, sets the law or policy. It is the procedure, practice of that state agency. What is it not? It's not something that we set internally, right? It is not our internal management. It's not what we do. It's not something that only affects us within TDLR. It's something that affects the public. That's what a rule is. So it can be either a new rule, it could be us amending something that's currently a rule, or it could be something that we're repealing in an existing rule. So how does rulemaking happen? Some of the things that we're discussing today: legislative changes, suggestions from you all as an advisory board, TDLR staff. So our staff may bring something to our attention and say, this is not working. These are some issues we've seen with program. We think that they need to be addressed. We go through a 4-year rule review. We haven't hit that point yet because this is a new program to TDLR. Relatively new, we're hitting 3 years. Or it's through a rule petition, and we'll discuss that a little bit more so you have some information, because that's not as common for us. What is a rule petition? So a rule petition can be filed by somebody who's an interested party, and they can submit that petition to TDLR saying, I want a rule adopted. And they let us know, this is what I think it needs to be. I think a rule should be changed, adopted. This is what it is. It's important to me. Who is an interested person? They've got to be a Texas resident. Bottom line is you got to be in Texas and have that connection. Business, a governmental subdivision, or a public or private organization that is not a state agency, but they're in Texas. So any of those people can file that rule petition. And we have a set of rules related to a rule petition. So there's parameters that you've got to follow in order to have a rule petition. And then we have also parameters we've got to respond to. So our rulemaking process, it's extensive, and I was talking about that this morning. We want to make sure the public has extensive opportunity for input, and our board is very, very involved. So how does it work? So we start at the very beginning. We've got ideas. We've got drafting. It takes time. You guys have been involved in this for the last almost year and have patiently worked with me, with the other members on drafting these skimmer rules, on cleanup of Chapter 97. So we start with our ideas. As soon as we got you appointed, we started having work group meetings after those got appointed. We go through an internal review and analysis. What does that mean? We draft our rules, and then we start drafting our response, our analysis. We look at the fiscal implications, and then we send those to the governor's office. They take a look at them and say, okay, cool, this is good. These make sense. From there, we have our first advisory board meeting with you. That's what we're doing here. A little bit different. We had a mini summit with you all in October to get a sneak peek of the rules. So we had not gone through that governor's office process. They were not official. So it was more of a working group when we first met. This is the first advisory board meeting in this process. So in that first advisory board meeting, we present those rules to you and we say, hey, what do you all think of them? Do these meet your approval? Do you think that we need suggestions? Do we think that they need changes? Do we need to go back and make some changes before we send them out? And at that time, you all have the opportunity to discuss, because up until now, they've been with work groups. That's a small group of people, remember, less than quorum. So not all of you have had a chance to look at those. From there, either you all make a motion to send them back to the Texas Register to open it for comment, or we go back to the drawing board. So assuming they were to move forward, those rules are sent to the Texas Register. They're filed and published. There's a 30-day public comment period. So anybody from the public can send in their comments on that proposal. They can say, great, I hate it, I love it, this is what you should change on it, this is how it affects me. So we have a link on our website. They send it their comments on a really easy form, and we take all of those in. So after that 30-day comment period closes, we start our analysis again. We look at them, we say, okay, is this something we can change? Is this a substantive comment? Is this even a comment applicable to the rules? We start reviewing them. If there are changes needed, we work on that proposal. If there's not, there's no changes needed. We bring them back to you at a second advisory board meeting, and you have an opportunity to look at those comments. If there's anything substantive in the comments, I'll discuss those with you during that second advisory board meeting. We'll also present to you any changes. During that second advisory board meeting, if you're looking at comments and you say, hey, I think that, or we think that there needs to be changes in response to this one, or the proposal is good to go ahead, that's the action you take in that second advisory board meeting. From there, the rules are sent to a commission, to the commission, sorry, not a commission, to our commission. And then the commission has a chance to review them. So our commission reviews them, and they have the opportunity to say, okay, these rules make sense. Our subject matter experts have had a chance to review them. Is there anything substantive that we need to know? Do they have any comments? And they're the ones that make that final decision on adoption. So you've got multiple opportunities for comment from the public. So they can make their comments, and then you've got the public who can comment during that commission meeting. So you've got many opportunities. From there, should they say, yes, we're ready, go ahead, the rules are filed with the Texas Register, and then they will be adopted at that time. So it's an extensive process, but it is that way for a reason: transparency and involvement by industry and the public. So what is rule review? So we're not there yet with this program. It's done every 4 years. So at 4 years, what we do is we publish an intent to review, and that goes into the Texas Register so everybody has a chance to be aware. And what rule review is, it's not, hey, I want all these changes to the rules, but it's, do the rules still have a reason for existing? Are they functioning? And at that time, we'll review it. Again, we're taking public comment during that time period. We do an internal analysis as well. So during that time period, yes, we have our public comment, but we are meeting as well with our internal staff, asking those questions as well. So it's not only external, it's internal. So we review all those comments that we receive from the public. We prepare memos, we let the commission know, and we write a recommendation to them. This is what the public thought. The decision is, let's continue the rules. They serve a purpose and a function. They still exist in statute. Let's keep moving, or for some weird reason, the statute has changed. So we make that recommendation. The commission votes to accept the rules and keep moving ahead. So we would file with the Texas Register notice to readopt the rules. At that time, we would let the advisory board know, these are any comments we received that were substantive or that were requested recommendations by the public to change the rules. And that's where we can start the rulemaking process again, if necessary. That's the opportunity to open up the rules and say, this can be better, this should be changed. And again, we talked about this earlier. There's always the opportunity to revisit and talk about suggestions and changes you all may have for the rules. Always open. Resources for you on rulemaking. Public Information Act. This is something, of course, that affects all state agencies. It affects you all as board members. It's something that is important to know. So what is the Public Information Act, Open Records Act? It's intended to allow the public to always have information and awareness of what's going on in the state agency, what government employees, public officials are doing. So it makes all documents, all records available and open to the public. So there's only very few exceptions of things that they don't have access to, but it makes fully transparent everything that's going on at a state agency. So they can put in a request and know exactly what's going on. This includes electronic communications, paper, anything out there that exists, and maybe a voicemail, whatever that is created in the course of business, agency business, official agency business, is available to the public as part of an open records request. So again, construed liberally for that transparency purpose. So our process, we have a fantastic team, processes thousands of requests. If, for example, some reason you all got a request that said, hey, I want to know, or I want a copy of the minutes, or I want to know what the rules were that you guys worked on, please forward that to our office or forward it to the advisory board if you don't know what to do with that. Once you all get a request as board members, you're still part of our team, part of our agency. So we need to get that processed right away. There's some strict timelines that we've got to meet. So if you receive anything, forward it to us so we can start working on it and get that response moving. So prompt response, what does that mean? So we have to start working on responses as soon as possible because we've got to respond. We can't delay, but no later than 10 business days, we have to respond to a request. So time is of the essence. Our team has to look at it, analyze it, and then get the information together to respond. So we can never ask someone why they want their records, but if we're not quite sure what the request actually is, or we need a little bit of clarification, our records team, which is led up by an attorney and her team, they can follow up on that request. So she has a lot of work to do. They have a lot of work to do. So what are some of those exceptions that I talked about? So there are some exceptions, some exemptions that are automatic. And of course, we have the opportunity to redact, to block out in those records your date of birth. Almost all email addresses are excluded from a public information request. Those are protected. Your driver's license, your license plate, your VIN number that are included, your credit card numbers, anything related to HIPAA, to medical information. So a lot of information is protected automatically. There's certain things within our statute that we have protections automatically, but there's some things that are not. And so there's some things that our records attorney, open records attorney, Mia Settle, has to work on and has to send to the Attorney General's office. So that's where that time is of the essence thing on 10 days. So if she doesn't submit within 10 days, we have to release it. And so there's times where we don't want to release that information, but we have to get the permission. We have to seek an opinion from the Attorney General. So we have to meet that timeline, get that opinion request in, and we work really hard to meet all of those timelines, and she's fantastic and gets that stuff done. So that's all I have for you, quick and concise in a nutshell. And if you have any questions, of course, let us know, and we're happy to follow up on anything that you all need.
Thanks, Jessica, for the important reminders and information. We appreciate it. With respect to public comment, I'm told that as of meeting yesterday, we did not receive it. So nothing to review or respond to there. Moving on to staff reports. First up is the licensing division. Laura Hernandez and Woody Martinez.
Good morning, board members. My name is Laura Hernandez. I'm a licensing manager that handles the renewals and applications and information for the motor fuel metering and quality program. My report has some personnel updates. We did have some new hires since our last board meeting with Nathan Winger and Amanda Hernandez. They were added. Our licensing division also recently went through a reorganization. Some programs and team members were moved. We went from having 5 teams to 4 teams. And because of that reorganization, I received more team members, which is Nisa McConaughey, Josh Lee, Kenneth Clopton, and Sam Torres. And they're all excited to learn the program as well. And some of them are already processing renewals and applications for the program. Next are statistics. You can see fiscal year 2021, 22, and then the first quarter for 2023. Those were the statistics that were available at the time this report was due. I'm not sure if you all have any questions regarding these statistics. And then further, my report is our current projects. We are helping and assisting our programming department with the development of an online renewal system for all the device facilities, in addition to some internal processing that's helping the division quickly process renewals and licenses. And with me is Odie Martinez, and she will provide a full update on this exciting project that is rolling out to the industry, or has rolled out to the industry.
Okay. Start my video here. Good morning. My name is Odie Martinez, and I am the project manager at TDLR. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk with you for a moment about the project we just completed to move motor fuel metering and quality devices renewals online. As you might imagine, accomplishing this task was quite an undertaking. We started in June of 2019 to transfer the program into a licensing system that is a homegrown and antiquated system that few software developers know about. So that contributed to our struggles. But our software development services staff powered on through, working hard to create a custom, secure renewal process for merchants renewing their devices. Over the past 3 years, approximately 10 software developers have worked on this project at various times. The FMQ devices online page rollout covers merchants who have perfect invoices. What that means is invoices that do not require any changes to the device counts. Once we created the process and software that powers it, we worked with several merchants with actual invoices to test the system. Thank you so much for those who participated. Their testing and feedback was invaluable in making sure that the rollout went smoothly. I am so pleased to report that this new process is speeding up renewals for merchants. For example, a perfect pay invoice paid online is processed automatically, and the registration is mailed within 3 to 4 days. We at TDLR look forward to providing additional improvements to the licensing and renewal process for the motor fuel metering and quality licensees, and we would truly appreciate your support. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura. Board members have any questions for these ladies?
Hey, Jason, Terry Maxey, can I just lob a couple of questions in there?
Certainly.
We just had kind of interfaced with the new online system. Just curious, has there been, how has it gone with customers renewing online and so forth? Has there been gaps, or what kind of things have y'all noticed, or what have been the biggest challenges?
So we've had probably approximately 25 clients that have used the system so far since January 9th. These are in addition to the testers that tested previous to that. We haven't received rarely any phone calls. It seems to be work in processing. We do run a report daily. That was another part of the project, so that we can monitor, making sure that those that go online, that we have received the information in our system and that we're mailing those certificates out. So it's kind of a check and balance to make sure, other than, maybe some of the customers that aren't sure of their client IDs have called in, just to find out what that client ID, because it's one of the things that's needed to be on that portal to continue the renewal process. But otherwise, it's been a seamless process.
Yes. Yeah, and also the testers, the actual companies that tested, they made the payment within 5 minutes. It was really fast for them, and they found the page pretty easy to use. So,
I was understanding that the previous records weren't, or is it kind of starting from scratch here forward, or was all of the previous records ported over, I guess, or was that kind of a thing?
So what we decided to go with is to use invoices from February because that's when the biggest renewal would come. Because when the program came over, everybody had an extended expiration date in February. 2023 was when the most of the industry was going to be renewing. So anybody who has a February 2023 invoice and then those that coming after can use that portal. So it doesn't have any of the previous information, but anybody that had questions about previous information could just call in and we'll assist with that. But the online will only have February going forward.
Got it. Thank you.
mhm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Everyone.
This is Adam. I had a quick question. So I had a customer actually call a couple days ago that they were trying to register a site, and I went on the portal. Usually I would just send them the link and let them go on. And now that this program is opened up, or this online registration has been opened up, I sent it over to him, and he said that he's already created an account and he can't get in. So I just sent him the PDF file to go ahead and register now. Is there, as y'all haven't had any issues with logging in, it very much could be just user error. I just want to make sure that when I'm advising them to use this portal, that we know it's functional, and that I can tell them, well, if you think you have an account, try it. If not, go ahead and create an account in order to renew. Is that right? Am I understanding that properly?
That's correct. They can always send us an email that goes directly to my team, so we can handle it right away. They could also call into customer service. I have not received a message or an email or an inquiry yet saying, "Hey, I'm not able to go online and find it," but we can definitely help the customer with that. We can contact our programming department to kind of take a look at it in case maybe something was entered incorrectly or anything like that. But they could just send us an email or contact us, and we can assist them. But we haven't received any responses or information back from customers saying they couldn't log in.
And as far as new technicians, a new service license, are y'all having any issues with those? I know I have personally have a couple of technicians that passed the test waiting on our license, and I have other technicians that are waiting on the approval to take their test. So I didn't know if there's a delinquent time period there, or if as we add new people on, that's what's kind of slowing that down.
No, those portals are separate. So the online device information is a separate portal from, say, a service technician or a supplier or anything like that that's going online. So if there's a lag in issues, we don't have any backlog in processing. Definitely send my team an email, or I can send you my information and we can look into it to make sure there's not a different issue. That one's completely different than our renewal for merchants.
Absolutely. Yeah. Being in this board and seeing, internally issues that halt up or whatever might help functionality in the future. So yeah, if you want to send an email, and I can kind of tell you what issues we had ran into and see if we can resolve those. I think it's just a mailing in versus online and what's going on. But I just thought I'd bring that issue up.
Okay, no problem. I'll definitely send you my information.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, ladies.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Don Robinson is going to give us an update on customer service today.
Good morning. I'm not Dawn Robinson, Mary Winston. I'm pinch hitting for Dawn this morning. So we had a couple of hiccups internally, but I'm here to at least summarize the report. If there are questions about it, I will definitely take them back to customer service. As you can see, we have these statistics for fiscal year 22, and that of course is from September to August. Emails, calls, all that came in through customer service. And we have the beginning, or I should say about half, well, beginning of fiscal year 2023, again, giving us totals of emails, very few, calls, and our totals. Any trends that you note, any questions that you may have, I will definitely take that back to customer service.
Terry Maxey, is there any particular thing that y'all have noticed that's led to, like, it looks to me like it's gone down by about half, even when you compare same months? If I'm reading that right, is there any particular trend or anything happening that's caused that or that y'all know about or anything?
Well, Mr. Maxey, specifics, I would have to get to you. But in general, we're always working to make the process better. So if we, we started off with this program not very long ago, and the population has learned more, has fewer questions, and then we try to make our ability to respond better. But if there are specifics with that, I definitely will ask Don and Twan, the director of customer service, and we can let you know.
Thank you, Mary, for filling in. Moving on to the enforcement division, Tony Reed.
Good morning. My name's Tony Reed. I'm a prosecutor in enforcement. One of the programs I work on is the Motor Fuel Metering and Quality, or FMQ. I'll call it FMQ so I don't trip over it. Starting with our personnel update, Senior Prosecutor Karen Cox retired after 17 years with TDLR. Investigator Robert Nino was promoted to the investigations team lead supervisor for the South region. Robert has 14 years with TDLR. Jessica Hurtado was promoted to Karen's senior prosecutor slot. Jessica now has over 5 years with TDLR. Jack Phillips was promoted to team lead supervisor for the North region. Jack has 7 years with TDLR. Prosecutors Rachel Sashon and Sarah McKinney were promoted to Attorney 3 to fill the slots opened by retirements and departures. We hired Pedro Perez as an Attorney 3. He retired after about 30 years with the Office of the Attorney General. Since the materials were prepared, Dax Garvin was hired as an Attorney 2. He has experience in private practice and the Office of the Attorney General. We have 2 open Attorney 2 positions that we're working on filling. The statistics for fiscal year 2023, which is September, October, and November of 2022, complaints received by source. Lion's share of complaints come from consumers. And you'll see we're getting 3 months, 300 complaints, about 100 complaints a month. Our key statistics that we watch pretty carefully, average time to close 173 days, and that's through intake, investigation, and prosecution. About 62% of the cases were resolved within 6 months, and 12% resulted in some sort of disciplinary action. The source of cases, again, mostly consumers. Can we scroll up a little bit? Okay, the outcome of cases we had this quarter, or the first quarter, we had 3 default orders, 40 agreed orders, and 239 cases were informally resolved, which is either resolved between the parties or a warning letter or a closing letter. The violations that we started looking at with each case, fuel quantity, fuel quality, device not working in order, and we've got too many unlicensed and expired license cases. And then the actual, if you scroll down, the actual penalties were that we issued. Unlicensed is most of them. We did have too many fuel quality given the damage that can cause. And if you scroll down, now stepping back to 2022, so we can look at a whole year at a time. Total complaints received from consumers, mostly about 100 a month. That's pretty steady. Our key statistics, 50% of the cases resolve within 6 months. Average time to close, 208 days. So we've improved since then. The percentage of cases resulting in disciplinary action, 4%. So it's pretty low, especially compared to TDLR as a whole. Source of cases, again, mostly consumer complaints. And then if we go down, these numbers are kind of consistent with the first quarter fiscal year 2023. Most of the cases are informally resolved. We did have 9 default orders. We mail out the notices of violation, certified mail. The default cases are ones where the respondent never responded. And then the alleged violations at opening, fuel quality, fuel quantity, device not working, again, too many unlicensed. And then the resulting in disciplinary action. Mostly most of the disciplinary action was against unlicensed or expired licenses. And scroll down. I'm going to summarize some of the cases that we had. First one, 10022. An investigator bagged a pump due to a broken lever spring that could cause a spill. A few days later, the investigator followed up and found the device was back in service and hadn't been repaired. So we kind of frown on that. 007539, water in the fuel, required stickers missing. And also there was a failure to cooperate with the investigator, which we take seriously. Case 006799, this was a price issue between the marquee and the pump. One of the reasons this went to penalty is because we issued a warning letter on the same violation a couple of years before. We had in 005528, we had expired registration, 05877. Excuse me. The device was leaking. The respondent was aware that it was leaking and didn't fix it for 4 days, or didn't take it out of service for 4 days. I'm available to answer any questions you have.
Thanks, Tony. This is Jason Harris. Would you give us a brief explanation for the term alleged violation? When is that actually, what is that time period? What is that actually referring to?
You were breaking up a little bit. Could you?
Sorry. The term alleged violations at opening, what point is in the process is that? I'm trying to get an understanding contextually, the difference in numbers between that and the final regular numbers.
Case comes in, a complaint comes in, it goes through intake to get the file together. and then it's investigated. When the prosecutor gets it, the prosecutor is looking at whether a violation actually occurred. There was something done that violated the law, and then the appropriate penalty, whether it's if there is a violation and there's sufficient evidence, then the prosecutor decides whether to issue a warning letter, if that will get compliance, or there's a penalty. That's the point where the notice of alleged violation would be written.
So the statistics under alleged violations, that's the time period when the case is referred from the investigator to the attorneys
I'm
when the
not,
case is open.
the investigator does the investigation. It comes to the attorney, and the attorney evaluates all the evidence.
Yeah, I don't know who's driving the screen, but they can scroll back up to one of the areas where it gives statistics for alleged violations at opening. Kind of highlight the question a little better.
Mr. Harris, this is John Medlock. Let me know if you can hear me or not. I'm the chief
Yeah.
prosecutor here.
Uh-huh.
So violations at opening. So when a complaint comes in, when somebody files a complaint with the department, it goes to our intake section. The intake reviews that again. They look to see if we have jurisdiction. But when they're actually opening the case, they review that complaint, and then they, in our legal file system, our online case management system, they mark a violation. So we have basically all the violations in short little snippets, like there is. If you want to scroll up and you can see those different snippets. That's kind of how we refer to it, as like, okay, when we read this complaint, this is what we think that this case is about. So that way it gives the investigator kind of a cue of, these are the things that I'm going to be need to be looking for. Again, they're obviously going to go through the whole process of asking the questions to the different parties, but that's just kind of our internal thing. So that way, if we get questions about, hey, how many cases did you guys, or how many complaints got filed about fuel quality, we can go quickly, query that report, be able to pull that number. How many cases were for unregistered devices, we can pull that kind of information. So that's what that number is. Doesn't mean that that's how the case is going to end up. That's just kind of how the initial start of it is.
Yeah, what's prompting my question is just trying to get a better understanding of the discrepancy between the high number of fuel quality violations that are relatively much lower number of actual findings. So I'm just
right.
I want to get is that just purely a number of essentially reflective of the number of complaints alleging that?
Yes, that is what that is. So if I think I understood your question, that you want to know what the discrepancy between the high number and the low number of findings, eventual findings of violations. Yes. We get complaints all the time. If somebody files a complaint in this program saying, hey, I got bad gas at this station, we're going to open that under a fuel quality, go through the process. We'll go out there. The investigators will pull the samples. We'll have that tested at a lab. And if it comes back as not being, being compliant, then obviously there's not much more we can do with that case. And so that's probably why the vast majority of people claiming bad gas, but then eventually our findings can't back that up.
Right, John, I appreciate that. So just to be 100% clear, on the screen now, there's an alleged violation of fuel quality 357.
Yes.
That's the entire fiscal year 2022. But that number is including basically every complaint related to fuel quality.
Correct. Yes. So anytime that case was marked as fuel quality as an opening, it would be reflected with that number.
Okay, understood. Thank you very much.
And Mary Winston, I'm going to put my head in. Just coming from enforcement, this happens all the time. Some folks complain about certain things that they feel are an issue. They may not be an issue. You can be accused of whatever. Then our enforcement staff, our investigators go out. Then we conduct, and our inspectors, and we find what we find. So it may not be reflective of what the actual complaint was. And Mr. Harris has his hand up.
Yes, I just have a quick question on the fuel quality. I know that we've experienced, a situation last week actually on one where a customer said that we had some yellow diesel, which is of course diesel with some bio. But when the inspector comes on site, are the inspectors instructed? They can, I mean, they will request, ATG before and after, and then BOLs, but typically a store will not carry those. It is okay for the store clerk to direct them to the corporate office to get that stuff, and it won't go into, you can get some more time and not be a failure to cooperate with the inspector. Is that correct?
Jessica Escobar, and I'm going to jump in. And so that was part of our rule discussion at the very initial start of this, at the rules when we adopted. Yes, because we know a lot of things are not maintained on site, and so that's why we wanted to be able to provide for electronic documents and not just hard copy immediately. So as long as there is a dialogue, we have heard that some people are not even wanting to refer or cooperate even at that level. So that would be considered non-cooperative, where you're not even wanting to send over to corporate, or corporate's not cooperating, but just saying, hey, I don't have these on site. Here's who you need to talk to, or please, contact this person. That's something entirely different. I do want to say, and kind of jumping in with John, we're constantly looking at the fuel quality testing with our lab, looking at what tests are run, looking at how things are being done. But the biggest thing that we also want to work with is compliance. And we understand sometimes we get there and the fuel is no longer there, but we're still going to pull those samples. But there may be other issues. And, we recently had a stop sale at the end of last year. The fuel quality, the issue was related to a corroded gas tank. And so they were going to continue to have those fuel quality issues, but we may get there and it may be sediment, maybe something else, the fuel is gone. But I will say that we are continuing to have discussions as we look at things with testing, with the lab, because we want to have ongoing conversations and make sure we are protecting consumers and reviewing things, and protecting the stations too, because they may not be aware of, maybe they got a delivery and maybe the issue was there. So we want to make sure that everybody is in compliance and cooperative and responsive, and remediation is a big piece of that.
Thank you. Yeah, we're working on getting a letter out to all of our stores, because a lot of our store people they really don't recognize the TDLR, so they just wonder. So we're going to try to get that clarified, that just direct them strictly does. So thanks for the help.
Jason, Terry Maxey, just a couple of quick questions. I noticed when y'all were doing Anthony doing the early recap, you talked about attorney 2 and attorney 3, and I'm assuming those are different levels of attorneys or something. Just in general, don't know if you've ever covered this, but how many attorneys that are involved in the prosecution are in TDLR? And I noticed that it looks like 10% or less of this is involving fuel motor quality. Is there any particular area that y'all spend most of your time, or with all the other programs that you manage?
We have, I think, about 18 attorneys in enforcement prosecution. There are 3 of us that do what we call transportation cases, tow, vehicle storage facility, and motor fuel are the big parts of that. And an attorney 3 handles complaints. The attorney 2 handles inspection cases, which we don't have with motor fuel. I lost my thought. That's the number of attorneys we have. That answers your question.
Yeah, and then just in general, like, of all this activity, fines of for $2.5 million, that kind of thing, and there's a fraction of that is in this industry. Is there any other particular industry that is most of your time, or is that kind of sort of evenly spread out over all of the things that you regulate? Just kind of more of a curiosity question than anything, I guess.
It depends on the program. We regulate transportation network companies like Uber, and that's in my purview. And I think in 5 years, I think I've handled 3 cases. We have cosmetology and barber, which is a lot of licensees. Massages is a lot of work. Air conditioning, electrical is a lot of work.
Okay. One last question about the specific cases. I noticed one of the cases, I think it's 5877, was about something leaking. And of course, when I read that, my first thought was, well, that's kind of an environmental TCEQ fire marshal thing. Is there any specific lines drawn around that? I mean, obviously, we'd all agree if there's something leaking, well, action needs to be taken, all that kind of stuff. But you guys end up prosecuting that as opposed to referring it to like a fire marshal, for example. How does that relate to the rules and so forth?
Well, a leaking device is a violates the NIST standards, which we've
Okay.
incorporated into our
That's
into
right.
our law.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Max, this is John Medlock, again, Chief Prosecutor. To also follow on that, if we do see in our case situations where there are environmental hazards, we do also make a referral to TCEQ or make them aware, or make the relevant parties aware, because our jurisdiction only goes so far. But when it comes to environmental hazards, things of that nature, we definitely get the TCEQ involved and let them know so that they can do their own investigation and take actions that they need to take.
Got it. Okay. All righty. Yeah. Thank you.
Folks, this is Carlos Garza. I got a quick question on fuel quality. Say you come upon, a compromised tank and a fuel, how far up the flagpole will this investigation go? Does it go from obviously the store owner to the supplier to, I guess, the transport company, to the terminal? Does it go back up all the way up to the refiner? Again, just a curious question. How in depth does that investigation go?
We investigate the station, and of course, when the investigator goes out, they let the station manager know what's going on. As far as investigating the delivery company, we wouldn't normally on a fuel quality issue.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I was just curious. I recently had a personal event where, it appeared that some diesel was compromised with gasoline or ethanol, and we went back to the store owner, and again, there was no complaints, and we just cleaned out the tank and moved on down the road. But I was just curious to see, how in depth the investigation goes. Does it go beyond the store owner, back to the transport company, back to the lifting point, and so on and so forth? Just kind of curious about that.
And kind of to touch on further what Mr. Reed said, unfortunately, we can only go to the bounds of what our regulated population is. So like somebody like a refinery, we don't touch those folks. So there's no way we could actually go all the way up to that point. So we kind of are limited by the bounds of who we do regulate.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Tony and John, this is Jason Harrison. Just one more quick question. I noticed from the data displayed, I think I saw that the first quarter of 23, there were 40 agreed orders, I think is what they were termed, and there were a total of 58 for the whole entire fiscal year 2022. Is that just kind of I noticed that the amount of time for each case has narrowed. So is that just a result of more cases getting in the pipeline quicker, or is there some other issue explaining why we might have seen an uptake in orders this fiscal year?
I was looking at that as I was going over the reports. Honestly, I think it's a function of we're seeing what is going on, so we know what we have to crack down on, and it's also now there's a history when we're looking at a complaint. There, one of the ones in that I presented, the violation was something they'd been warned about. So we did, we're getting past the point where, you know, we've already warned you about this. And so we're doing more NOAVs because of that.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for?
Ms. Esqueda has her hand up.
Yep.
Keisha Esqueda, I had a question, one on the laboratory that is used. Is this a state laboratory or do you contract that out to a third-party fuel lab?
We contract that out to Tribalogic.
Okay, and then if there's a fuel quality issue at retail, do you bag the pump immediately until the issue is resolved and you have, you know, lab results back, or how does that process work?
So Jessica Escobar, I'm going to jump in on that one because we only have limited statutory authority. So as far as the way the statute is written now, our authority is limited to after we get results, right? And so it has to be a stop sale is limited as far as fuel quality to an order by the executive director. So we've got to go through a lot of phases before we can even do that. So they've got to have their results from the lab and then get to that point. I will say that there is a legislative cleanup bill this session that allows for a more expedited process, so that there is the ability for our investigators to go through, if they see issues, they are able to, that they identify that pose a heightened risk, for example, like the water in the fuel, things like that, where they do need to make that judgment call. And there is a very clear finding. So we're not talking about, you know, maybe there's a fraction and it's kind of a, let me get a magnifying glass and I see an issue. Very clear that there's a finding. Then they can work with our director of enforcement. So there's like a check and balance. And then they can make that call on the stop sale, and then we can go from there. But we've got to have the very clear evidence so that our enforcement division, it's got to be something they can use in taking that action from the next step. So that is something that is a proposed legislative cleanup right now with the 88th legislature, because it provides that added protection. Because if it's taking us 3 weeks or more to actually get that stop sale enacted, people have been harmed if there's truly an issue at that gas station. So that's something we're looking ahead to, but there are checks and balances so that somebody cannot unilaterally make that decision on the fly.
I want to add the what Jessica was talking about was our legal authority, but in practice, when an investigator, we usually try to get to these the next day, at least within a couple days of the getting the complaint. The investigator is talking to the station saying, I got a complaint that there's water in your gas. The 95 or more % of the station folks say, oh, I'm going to bag this pump then and let's figure this out. And we don't have to do a stop sale. So most of the time, if there's an allegation of bad fuel, there's a voluntary bagging of the pump. And that's something we encourage if there's a fuel problem and it's not something super negligent and the consumers are taken care of and the station cooperates, then we're more likely to issue a warning than a notice of violation.
Mary Winston, TDLR. Thank you, Tony, for saying that, because in enforcement and TDLR, we're more corrective than punitive. First of all, is the public protected? If there's no public harm, if there's something that's been brought to our attention, we want to correct it. We are not attempting to be punitive. We just want it done right to serve the public as effectively as possible. We did have presiding officer Mr. Thompson hand was up. It's down now. I'm not sure if he still wants to say something. And I think Mr. Harris' hand is still up. I'm not sure if he had another comment or if his hand was still up.
User error, sorry.
Okay, okay, sorry. Okay, I understand. Okay.
This is Adam Thompson. I was just going to ask, the fuel quality that goes down to ethanol, octane, water. That's all different violations, correct? Or is that all going to fall under the fuel quality? What somebody may complain about?
So the general category of fuel quality would contain all those different ones. We don't have it breaking out. We don't have it broken down between octane, water, those different kinds of things. So if somebody is reporting bad gas, that violation at opening will just be fuel quality. Then the testing does what it is, but in our actual violation, it'll be listed as fuel quality, but it'll specifically cite to that specific NIST violation or NIST standard.
Any additional questions for the enforcement? Okay, thank you, Tom. Moving on to the regulatory program management, Tim Foskey.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tim Foskey, and I'll be giving the Regulatory Program Management Division staff report. We'll start off with personnel updates. On Wednesday, August 31st of 2022, Stuart Sinnard resigned from his position as the Consumer Safety Section Manager within the Regulatory Program Management Division. I would like to welcome Chris Russey to the FMQ team. Chris is the new Consumer Safety Section Manager within the Regulatory Program Management Division. There has been no other staff changes made to the motor fuel metering and quality supervised by myself, Tim Foskey. The FMQ team is comprised of 6 FMQ program specialists located throughout the state and 1 program specialist located in Austin who processes incoming skimmer complaints and reports. The FMQ program specialists continue to perform skimmer, fuel quality technical inspections in response to complaints received by TDLR. Statistics, fiscal year of 2023, September 1 of 22 through December 7th of 2022. Skimmer complaints conducted by TDLR was 111. Skimmers identified and removed by TDLR was 16. Merchant reports received by TDLR was 66. And skimmers identified and removed by merchants, service companies, and others were 75. Technical inspections, the fuel quality inspections, 23, fuel quality inspections, 13, and fuel theft, meter tampering inspections, 35. Fiscal year of 2022, which is in September 1 of 2021 through August 31st of 2022. Skimmer complaints inspections conducted by TDLR, 535. Skimmers identified and removed by TDLR, 114. Merchant reports received by TDLR, 266. And skimmers identified and removed by merchant, service companies, and others, 278. Technical inspections, fuel quality inspections, 138. Fuel quality inspections, 54. Current projects. The FMQ team has been working with the Financial Crimes Intelligence Center, FCIC, Texas Comptroller's Office, and local law enforcement on meter tampering, fuel theft cases. Over the past few months, TDLR has received numerous reports regarding fuel theft from merchants across the state. And during a meeting with the FCIC and the Comptroller's Office, we decided that the meter tampering, fuel theft cases should be referred directly to local law enforcement since they are the authority and have jurisdiction over theft. If a merchant suspects they have been a victim of fuel theft, they should contact a service company to inspect their devices for tampering. If a device has been tampered with, the merchant should contact law enforcement immediately to report the theft. Outreach. FMQ staff have been working with merchants, law enforcement, service technicians, service companies regarding required skimmer reporting and meter tampering fuel theft reporting. Outreach is still being provided during technical inspections to assist in device registration, consumer information stickers, CIS, and required reporting of skimmers found. FMQ staff continue to monitor the FMQ Tech Info email box daily to provide responses to technical questions from the public, merchant operators, service companies, and service technicians. This concludes my report. Does anybody have any questions?
Terry Maxey, quick question on the referral of fuel theft to just back down to the local law enforcement or whatever. I'm just curious. I mean, is that not seen as potential organized crime activity, or just trying to think that through a little bit? Because I know when we talk about skimmers and stuff, that's seen as organized crime, and we're trying to go sort of up the food chain. You know, local law enforcement is not very effective with that, but is this viewed differently, or has it been a change, or it just says it has been decided? It doesn't really give any detail on that.
Yeah, you know, we reached out to FCIC. We also reached out to, like I said, the comptroller's office, because we were trying to find out who would really be responsible for that. And we've been trying to work with, Adam up there with FCIC. Again, he's interested in what's going on, obviously. And so, we have discussed that with him. If we would like to send him we try to send him, information when we do receive these. That's something that we will probably further discuss with him. Just make sure that we're all on the same page. Again, like you said, this is organized crime. They're a part of that. We suspect that anyway. So that's something we may have to, run by again and work with the FCIC on as well.
Jessica Escobar jumping in on this issue. So one of the issues that we're seeing, Mr. Maxey, is that it's theft. And so we don't have any legal authority over it. It's a criminal matter. The CPA, the comptroller's office, is very limited. Like us, they have very few staff that can follow through on this issue. They do have a criminal investigative division that goes after items such as this, because it is related to tax theft. I mean, it relates to tax. So they do look after that. They work on some skimmer issues, but fuel is their main thing that they look at. They're very limited on staffing. And so the reason that everybody ended up on local law enforcement is FCIC doesn't have the bandwidth. They can't respond immediately, and neither does CPA. So in sending them to local law enforcement, it can at least start out the conversation. You can get a police report, just like with skimmers, right? So you get your police report, you get things moving, and then from there, you can kind of get the information to FCIC. They can start or continue their investigations, because that's the crux in the role of FCIC, is to bring those investigations together, because somebody here in Austin may not know something is happening down in Harlingen. So that's kind of how that decision was made as to local law enforcement investigation, because it would be a local theft matter.
Hey, Jessica, this is Jason. So does the statutes creating the FCIC just support them in handling these scenarios? Because it's not, necessarily financial crime. It's not skimming.
Right.
They're closely related, but just help us understand where that boundary is.
So you're right. So the way that the financial crimes statute is written, it's related to card fraud. And so one of the things, again, statutory cleanup this session, perfect timing. There's a cleanup bill to address the role of the Financial Crimes Intelligence Center. When that bill was passed in the 86th now? Yeah, 87th. When that bill was initially passed, the thought was they were going to work on card fraud, and eventually there was going to be more things. Well, it exploded. It absolutely exploded, and all the things they started working on from, the word go. And so now we had pollsters come out of the way, and now we've had fuel theft in literally pulling fuel out of the ground. So these are things that was not envisioned. This cleanup bill will expand specifically that they'll be working on organized crime, because that is the intent. They're not going to go to where, you know, you've had your card compromised, you or me. It's not for individuals, it's for organized issues. So that is going to be something to specify what they can and will work on. But the bottom line is they're going to be working on coordinated investigations. They wouldn't necessarily lead or do an investigation, but they would be working on that. So it'll just clarify their role.
Appreciate that. Any additional questions for Tim? Tim, I just had one, and I'm sorry, I think I've asked this of various people before, and I maybe don't remember the answer, but was there a set protocol or guidance on the process individual investigators use to contact the merchant after a complaint's been made? We've kind of seen it in a few different ways. I just want to, what's the flexibility there, and what consistency is mandated by the process that might exist? If you could help us understand.
I'm sorry, Jason, you kind of cut it out again on me.
Sorry.
You were saying that just the process of how, once we receive a complaint and then how we handle that situation?
Well, how specifically do you notify the merchant? Really is the question.
We notify, excuse me, you blipped out one more time. We notify who?
The merchant.
Oh, the merchant. If we receive a merchant complaint saying that, hey, you know, we did find a skimmer at our location.
No. Sorry. So if you get let's say it's a fuel quality complaint from a customer against a merchant facility, when and how does that investigator notify that merchant?
Well, normally we show up to the location, and normally, like in my instance here, you know, the investigators will reach out to, you know, the program specialist and say, hey, you know, I have this complaint. Would you mind, you know, running out to this location? You know, we're busy on working on another possibly a case on something. We will run out to that location and then notify them and say, hey, you know, we're here at your facility. We had obviously a fuel quality complaint. You know, at that point we would, you know, pull their fuel, you know, and then leave them documentation and paperwork, and then send that fuel off then to the laboratory and await its results.
Yeah, I think my question kind of relates to an issue that Terry brought up a little bit earlier. I think if we got to a more standardized place with respect to, you know, how that notification is made to that merchant, you might get better response back from those merchants if they understand, you know, a more consistent process for them being advised that there's a problem. So a lot of times this comes out of the blue. You know, we as operators, we have no understanding there's a problem. You know, you've had a one-off customer complaint. Sometimes we've received emails notifying us. Sometimes inspectors have just shown up. I don't know that any way is better than another. It's that consistency that kind of would help merchants provide you guys with consistent responses in a timely fashion. That's kind of my end.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I don't know if you have like an inspector handbook or anything, any kind of guidelines or procedures that you could work that in to kind of give the investigators an understanding of what the parameters are for notifying the merchants. That's kind of really my opinion.
Gotcha. Yeah, you know, we do have you know, a little bit of procedures and processes when it comes to, you know, going to the facility, you know, just making them aware of our presence, letting them know what we're going to do. You know, we also ask them for paperwork and things like that refers to maybe the last drop that they had at that location and things of that nature, and explain to them what we are going to do. That's you know, that's with our team investigators. You know, I assume that they're very similar to that, or they may reach out, maybe make a phone call and you know, find out you know, about the fuel itself. You know, but you know, the program specialist, you know, normally just show up to the location and again address the manager that's on staff at the time and let them know at least what's going on as far as if they're going to be pulling samples and things like that and sending it off to the laboratory.
Sure. And my question is not intended to limit, you know, a program specialist's abilities in that regard. I'm just curious about consistency. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, moving on. The executive office, Mary Winston.
Good morning. It is still morning. Brief report today because when we gathered all of our information for this meeting, our session had not started. But this is the 88th. It has started. We're in the first several days, but we do have currently, our legislature has filed 2,107 bills, and TDLR is monitoring 149 of those. But we will have more information on that coming up because now currently for that, we have on our website the number of bills that we're tracking. We have a list of the bills we're tracking, and you don't have to like figure it out. You can go on our website, click on bills from this session, and under your field, motor fuel quality and metering, you'll see the bills, bill numbers, excuse me, and links to review those bills that have been filed. And we do know that once this starts, it could end in a very different way. But if you want to track them, please go to TDLR often. It's updated, and we are doing that. But today, we want to finish up business that we have already ongoing. That's a bill implementation update. Earlier, you heard from Jessica Escobar, who quietly and quickly said, Chief of Staff, that is a promotion for her. And I would like to congratulate her on that well-deserved, well-earned promotion. She has been an excellent asset to TDLR since her arrival here. And I didn't have that on the agenda, but I'm slipping it in there anyway in this update because she's going to be providing the next part of this, actually the business of the hour, which is an update on financial crime intelligence center, as well as discussing rules that we're working on, that you all have been working on related to our last legislative session. I'm going to go into the communication outreach statistics very briefly and just let you know who's reaching out to us on our website, on our program page for motor fuel quality and metering and quality in the past 6 months. We have a little under 13,000 views, under 70 per day. Most folks are operating from their computers. This varies because we have some fields that are in the field. Some of our professions, tow truck workers, electricians may or may not be sitting at their desk. But in this particular location, those folks who are looking are those folks making those decisions, and they're at their desktop. But almost half of them are also going from their smartphones. So we want to make sure the information that we have is viewable and available for everyone. Top reasons for visiting our site is device performance review, complaints, device registration, laws and rules, and forms. This is just a brief report today because we'll have much more to come as the session goes on. And I want to provide Jessica with plenty of time to go over our next 2 agenda items. But if there are any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Mary. Appreciate it. We've talked a little bit about the Financial Crimes Intelligence Center, but Jessica's going to give us a few more updates.
Good morning again. I just wanted to touch base on the Financial Crimes Intelligence Center. I briefly mentioned that, but it is a very exciting development. I let you know earlier that they have a lot going on. When that bill passed, we knew that we had a lot ahead of us. We knew that we were going to be standing it up from scratch, and we knew there was going to be a lot to it in 2021. That bill was effective September 1, 2021, and literally there was nothing to it. There was an empty building in Tyler, and staff had to come online. They started October 1st of 2021, and they hit the ground running. We anticipated them working on card fraud. We didn't know what it was going to look like, and within the first couple of months, they were working on getting their infrastructure, their databases, all of that set up. And it just blew everybody away. They started getting requests from local law enforcement. They started getting requests from U.S. Secret Service, FBI, nationwide. And so the success, to say that they are successful and this has gone above and beyond is an understatement. So just as a quick highlight, I'm going to share this really briefly and then take this off the screen because I don't need to keep this on here very long. But I just wanted to show this to you real quickly as a highlight. Their budget when we started, and I hope you can see my Microsoft Word screen, everybody. So their budget over 2 years to operate with their staff, to operate their facility, everything they have, database, everything, was is $2.6 million. So in their first year of operations, they had already recovered, prevented fraud in the amount of almost $49 million, which is amazing to say that they had done that with essentially the first part of the year. They had done that with 3 staff. They're now at 6, which is fantastic. But on a shoestring staff, they were able to do that. And so that wasn't just card fraud, of course. They started getting into pollsters really quickly. Then they started hearing about other issues that people were reaching out to. Mid last year, they caught a data breach with a Texas mortgage company, and they prevented identity theft for many, many Texans. So there's different things that they've got going on that's really, really interesting that we can't even touch base on yet. So we're hoping that we'll be able to share our first press release pretty soon once they have the ability to do so. Here's some information for you. I know Tim is able to share some things with you, but these are kind of some key numbers that they wanted to share. So last year, they'd recovered about 400 skimmers between, TDLR. So Tim's team had gone out and recovered almost 400 skimmers. So how does this play in for FCIC? So specifically, and this is why I want to share this with you, not just about the awesome work of our TDLR team, but specifically because of FCIC. Almost 80 skimmers were found because of this proactive CPP data. What does that mean? CPP means common point of purchase data. So that is from our financial industry partners. So people like our ex officio member, Steve Skurlock, with the Independent Bankers Association of Texas, Texas Bankers Association, those financial industry members, banks across Texas are looking at data and they're seeing, for example, one gas station, one location where multiple customers are having card compromises. And so they're analyzing data and saying, this is really odd. This pattern is not right. They're providing that information to Adam and his team. They're looking at it. And when they look at it, they send it to us. And so someone on Tim's team is able to respond pretty quickly with almost a 90–95% accuracy rating. They're finding a skimmer there, which is amazing. So they're using that. And with that information, they found those skimmers. So why is that important? That highlights what the Financial Crimes Intelligence Center was set up for. It wasn't just set up for being a repository for information. It was set up for partnerships. It was set up to be partners with merchants. It was also importantly set up to be partners with the financial industry, because not only are consumers being hurt and merchants being hurt, the financial industry is being hurt. So there's multiple people that are being victims to card fraud, organized crime, financial crime. So in those partnerships, everybody's bringing resources together, and we're leveraging all of that through the Financial Crimes Intelligence Center. So they're using all of that. They're providing training. They're organizing these investigations. So they're not taking the lead. Local law enforcement still has to go out there, do investigations, prosecutions happening at a local level, but they're providing resources. And so they're able to identify, they're serving as a central point. And so somebody might send them information, they might identify it, and somebody, like I said, somebody in Amarillo might have somebody that they're identifying as a suspect or potential suspect, and they're connecting them with somebody in San Antonio. And those are things that have happened throughout the year. So it's fantastic that they're putting everybody together as these organized crime networks. We have some things ahead of us. We talked about bill implementation for FCIC, but we're now in the 88th session. We do have, I mentioned, several cleanup bills. One of those is for the FCIC to clean up what they are, what their authority is. They also have something that's very important to the motor fuel industry. So they have a cleanup bill related to pulsers. So that is not a TDLR bill because we don't have authority over pulsers. We don't have authority over the penal code, but that is something that prosecutors and law enforcement felt that it was important to revise. And so within Chapter 16 of the Penal Code, they're looking to have something similar to what they have right now for skimmers. So that's something that they're working on and looking ahead on that. Not only that, we have an exceptional item within our legislative appropriations request so that we can work with the Financial Crimes Intelligence Center. I mentioned that they started with 3 staff. They were able to move around some funds. They now have 6 staff. That's not enough. You can see all the work that they're doing. The resources they have are limited and they've got more work coming. So as people know who they are, the work is increasing. So that funding that they're requesting as part of that exceptional item would be to hire more staff to do some construction within their facility so they can make room for those additional staff, and then also to establish a forensic laboratory within their building. So it sounds a little bit bigger than it is, but really it's building out their facility so they have a dedicated room to it and the staff that would work within that forensics lab. And so what is that? Basically, if you have a skimmer that you remove, you have laptops, phones, anything like that that's tied to this organized crime, it can be sent to the FCIC. They can download that information and do something with it. What they're finding now is that local law enforcement either doesn't have the bandwidth to analyze the data or just doesn't know what to do with it. So rather than let it sit in an evidence locker and it may get looked at within several months or a year or never, it can actually be used by FCIC. So we have a lot of stuff going on with them. We're very excited and proud of the work that they're doing. The fact that they've almost prevented $50 million in fraud is amazing within 1 year's work on a $2.6 million budget over 2 years. So we're really, really proud of that work, and we'll continue promoting that relationship, and they're working with a lot of our merchants as well. So some of our merchants have reached out directly to them. How can I improve our facility? How can I improve and protect us? So if you have questions, if you want to work with them directly, please feel free to reach out to them. That's what they're there for. So that's my quick update for you, as I know we're approaching the lunch hour.
Thanks, Jessica. Very exciting news. Any quick questions about the FCIC?
Jason, this is Steve. Starlock, I just wanted to absolutely reinforce and validate everything that Jessica just shared, not doing it nearly as eloquently or as thoroughly, but also to thank the TDLR and Jessica in particular just for their amazing efforts to move this forward. I think, as she said, it's surpassed anyone's expectations at this point in time. We're looking forward to going to the next level, and I know a lot of you nice folks on the call are not overly familiar with FCIC. We obviously are working very closely with Adam and his team, as well as the TDLR folks. So just thank you all, and wanted to recognize the amazing stuff going on, both at TDLR and FCIC, and through Jacob up in Smith County and the DA's office. So thank you tremendously, and we're looking forward to doing whatever we can to move this process forward and provide support for this very important initiative. So thank you, and I'll yield the remainder of my time, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate the comments. Does anybody feel like we need a quick break, or we're ready to plow on through? Okay. I got a motion there visibly. So let's take a quick, Delia, what do you think? 10 minutes? Is that? Okay. 10-minute break. Let's be back at 11:51. Thank you. return the FMQ Advisory Board meeting back to order. Our next topic on the agenda is to discuss the changes to Chapter 97 as a result of the changes made to statute in the 7th legislature. I first want to thank the work group members for their time and effort to draft up these rules. I know that that process is not easy, and it's often more of an art than a science. So I appreciate your time and effort doing that. Just because rather than kind of read through line by line on these, you were all provided a copy of the current draft. I'm just going to ask Jessica to go through and discuss kind of in general section, maybe highlight some of the biggest changes or things that. Before you do that, Jessica, can you give us kind of a time frame on this rule package and any kind of deadlines we're up against with respect to the commission's obligation?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Harris. Jessica Escobar. And so background on the rules. You are absolutely correct. Thank you. Rules work group, skimmer work group. We have a continuing education work group, which you're not going to see those rules in this particular package. So let's talk timeline. You saw during the rules, during the open government presentation, it's a long window. Yes, this is part of bill implementation, only in the fact that we had the skimmer, essentially the program transferred to us a couple of sessions ago, right? So there is no specific timeline. We have rules in place related to skimmers. However, there is no deadline. We have nothing up against us that says, hey, by June 1st, you have to do X thing. So we've got time, we've got flexibility. You saw that we worked throughout the year last year with our work group. We came, we went, we had several meetings where we were able to have discussion. We talked internally, we talked externally. We brought these back to you in October because it was important to me that we have a meeting as a whole to see what you all thought. And I didn't want to bring you a proposal and be ready to go to the register when you all hadn't had time to discuss this, because as we talked earlier, only the work group had a chance to look at these. So now we're back again. We've made the changes in response to the October meeting. The work group met again after that. And so now we have a proposal. Just because we discussed the proposal today with those changes relating to skimmers, it doesn't mean you have to send them off to the register. This is another opportunity for discussion. If you all are not comfortable at this time, if you have thoughts, if you need to digest them again, if you have suggested changes again, you can put these on pause. We can meet again. We can meet again in a month. You can send them back to the work group. We can meet again as an advisory board and discuss them. So I just want to make clear, there is no pressure on you at this time to take action. Yes, they're here. You have the opportunity to make a motion and we can go forward, or you can decide otherwise. So I will go ahead and go forward now unless you all have any questions regarding the process.
Just quick protocol. I think I want Jessica to kind of get through her general review and then open it up to the board members to ask specific questions on specific language and so on and so forth. Is everybody okay with that? Yeah, be a little smoother. Thanks, Jessica. Go ahead.
I will go through and then we can talk about specifics after that. So I'm going to go high level on this. So what we're going to go through is general subchapter. These are things that we talked about at that last board meeting. Right now, these are just high level changes, cleaning up the definition section, nothing very specific, all broad. Once you make a change, we've got to do some renumbering. So nothing substantive that affects the interpretation of the rules or that affects the way you're doing business. The adoption by reference section is something that we talked about with the rules work group. Nothing, again, that really changes other than clarification, and we can talk about that later if necessary. In subchapter B, this is a cleanup section. We're just aligning everything, number one, with your definition section, but we're also aligning it with our other, I hope you can still see my screen. We're aligning that as well with our other rules. So This is a cleanup section on most of these changes. It's cleanup, and you'll see cleanup here. We're removing all those references we had when we initially adopted the rules, because when we initially adopted, we had those effective dates, 2020, 2021, removing those, cleanup. Now is when we get into the substance of skimmer rules. So these are the new sections. And I will go over those high level, but I just do want to point those out to you here. This is where we've got some changes relating to skimmers. We did have this in place. As far as skimmers, there were no specifics related to the timelines that are there for reporting. I will say these are statutory. So you've already got these requirements in statute, and we brought them into rule. So these already exist. These were not created by us in rule. They exist in statute. And so merchant, service technician, they already have these requirements. So these exist whether we put them in rule, whether we don't. Statute already requires these things to be done. So here we put, we clarified that you've got to make a report to law enforcement, how things need to be done. This is the difference. We added a 24-hour reporting timeline to TDLR. There was no timeline before. It was just notify us. And we provided some procedures as to what you need to do as a merchant when you find a skimmer. And basics, you've got to cooperate with the department and law enforcement. Added 9730, new rule, highlights the fact that you should not be removing a skimmer unless you're specifically directed by law enforcement or the department. Again, this is a new rule. It's also kind of a basics in the penal code. If you're removing a skimmer without authority, it's a crime. And so we want to make clear you shouldn't be doing this. This is more of a reminder than anything. So it's, yes, we would have administrative authority if you're going in there and doing it. More so, it's a reminder. It's a crime if you're removing the skimmer, and you shouldn't be. And that's kind of one of the things we're seeing is people are removing skimmers and doing nothing with them. And that's probably more so it's unintentional, but it can be considered a crime if it's pursued. Device safety. This is one we had a lot of discussion on and was given a lot of thought between not only our skimmer work group, but with you all as a board. So this is the one that we might have some continued discussion on. Tamper evidence security labels must be used, and this prescribes how to use them. Got serial numbers. If they're damaged, you've got to replace them. This is the next big piece. How are you protecting your dispenser, the devices internally? We've given a January 1, 2024 deadline to comply with the rule. You've got to either have replace your universal lock or install a physical lock that protects the dispenser, protects the device from access, or install some type of alarming or disabling mechanism that disables the equipment if there's an authorized access. So we've got a January 1 deadline. I will say if, for example, the rules were, you all passed along these rules today and we start going through the process, it's possible, assuming we go on the timeline that we talked about earlier in our open government training, it's possible that the rules could be effective by June. So that essentially gives merchants about 6 months, if they're not already doing these things, to come into compliance. So just food for thought as we look at this. If for some reason we don't proceed today, obviously that gives us time to play with this January 1 before we move forward and propose. Inspection and maintenance logs. This is something that was taken from the OAG rules that had already existed. Merchant is required to maintain these. Again, something that's probably already done in the course and scope of business. You've got to go out and inspect daily. We just say once a day, you go out, you inspect, make sure your dispensers are not damaged, make sure that if there is a security label that's damaged, you're going to replace it. If there is damage to a dispenser, you're going to contact your service technician. You're not going to contact us because we're not going to respond and fix your dispenser, which needs to be in compliance with NIST. but you're going to contact your service technician, make sure it gets all repaired, replace those damaged or missing security labels. So that's a once daily. In response to that, you've got to maintain the log. So if somebody's going out there at 9 a.m., they just sign your log. I was out there at 9 a.m., done. You don't have to put specifics about which dispensers they looked at, you know, where they were, anything like that. Name, date, done. Maintenance log is the next thing. So this is more of a tracking piece. It provides a kind of a paper trail. Who is looking at your dispensers, right? So we know, okay, this person and this person were touching that dispenser this day, the day before, and a skimmer was found. They might have information. That's not to say that the person installed a skimmer. But maybe if a skimmer was found yesterday afternoon, but yesterday morning, that service technician happened to be there performing a device performance review, what if they should have found that? Complete coincidence? Maybe somebody installed it at lunch, who knows? But this is just to know and kind of keep track, but also so you know who's coming out and looking at your devices. So it's keeping track and knowing that not just anybody is coming out to your facility and getting access. So those logs all have to be maintained for a year from the data maintenance. The other new thing that we have in here is the required training for facility employees that actually work with the devices. So the easiest way to explain this, because we went back and forth as to who is a fuel facility person, we don't want somebody that's in the back having to do this training. We just went with Class A or C operator from TCEQ. So that was the cleanest, easiest thing. If you're a Class A or a Class B, you're going to do this training as well. Our thought is it's going to be a training provided by, or it's going to be a training provided by the department. Easy, we're going to do it. It'll be a video. You watch the video, you're done. All you have to do is sign off, keep a record of it in the file. Easy. So no cost to anybody for compliance. Next changes, we're talking about subchapter D. Again, clarification and cleanup for us in this chapter. And making clear again, don't be removing a skimmer unless you're under direction of law enforcement or department for background on discussion purposes. This is in response when you can't get law enforcement out. So work with us as far as, you know, do you need to respond and take a skimmer out? Okay, we understand that, but please work with, you know, TDLR or law enforcement if that needs to happen. This is another cleanup item. And that is it. That was a very quick discussion and overview, but I want to make sure you guys have plenty of time for questions on this rule package and discussion. And I'll leave this open in case you have questions.
Okay, appreciate it. Any
Jason, is the Terry Maxey, is the goal to kind of discuss these line by line here, or just hit the high points and then we're gonna have a future meeting, or what exactly?
whatever we need as a board, Terry. So, you know, this is really the second bite at the apple since we had that October kind of special meeting. But, you know, we want to be sure to get these right. So our job, you know, as a board is to provide our input to the TDLR to make sure that these rules are, you know, effective but not burdensome. You know, that's kind of part of their ethos. We respect that and appreciate it. We want what's on paper ultimately to get at the problem, but at the same time not be, you know, a burden to the regular community. So any and all questions you have are open. It can be as far down in the weeds as you want it to be.
Well,
I'm sorry, excuse me, Mr. Maxey. I will say I also have John Medlock, our chief prosecutor, online. So if you have any questions as far as the implication and application of these rules, he's available as well.
Jason, did I, and I'm guilty of I had to miss the October meeting. It was strategically planned while I was flying back from Vegas. So I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage if this has already been discussed by the group. So I don't want to backtrack and rehash if we've gotten past all this already.
Yeah, Terry, don't let that be a limitation to you, please. If you see something on here that is concerning or you think needs to be refined or changed, then by all means, that's the point of this. The October meeting was just kind of a primer to kind of allow for additional development discussion, but now we're getting into the, the brass tacks of what language this board is going to advise the TDLR to consider and put out for comment.
When you're looking at things like replacement of locks and things like that, those being regulatory requirements, there's a pretty good cost to that. If you think about each dispenser has 2 locks and the average location has 4 dispensers, that's 8 locks. You could be paying hundreds of dollars per location, or thousands of dollars. So there's a pretty big cost to doing that. And I don't know if that was a part of the consideration or not. Obviously, and the other thing is that most of the dispensers, one of the questions I had queued up just in my mind is getting ready for the meeting is there's a focus on skimmers and things like that, but most of the dispensers, and I don't know if Wes or some of you guys can say how many, or Jason or whatever, but most of the dispensers have been replaced with EMV dispensers. So most of them now turn off automatically if they're tampered with. Most of them use chip readers. So skimmers, in my mind, were kind of a threat from about 18 months ago back when you had mag stripe readers. So I just make sure we're not, a solution searching for a previous problem kind of thing. We had, as far as my company goes, we have a couple dozen locations, whatever. We certainly had our share of skimmer issues 2 years ago, but I'm not aware of a single tampering event we've had in the last 12 months or so since we've replaced the dispensers with the EMV type dispensers. I would hate to think that I would have to go back, or my customers would have to go back and replace all of their locks or something like that. And as far as the tape goes, it's again, it's not when you get it serialized and all that stuff, there's an effort that has to be involved in that. So there's something to doing all that. We were very involved with the tape and all, again, prior to the upgrade of the dispensers. But once that occurred, throughout the system, that was really the only concern about that was if the customer wanted to see the tape or not. It really, the real functionality was in that the dispenser would now turn off if anybody, opened the door or anything like that. So that's a couple of them. I wrote down 5 or 6 notes, but those are my 2 sort of opening, making sure that those are well thought out for the cost versus the benefit, I guess.
Yeah, Terry, greatly appreciate those comments. I share some of those, questions and concerns. And I see Steve has his hand up, so definitely want to hear from him. I just want to kind of make a general philosophical, statement here. I think in the absence of initial regulations, and even in response to the original OAG, I mean, a lot of responsible merchants put a lot of effort into securing dispensers and trying to limit fraud on their own. I want to be respectful of those efforts. I think we want to craft a rule that allows some flexibility as long as, the end goal is still achieved, So I also kind of have some concerns specifically about the security seal program. It's not to say that that program can't be effective. I think it can be if it's done right. I just think it may not be the panacea for every operator. I would like to see these rules kind of allow for, if there's 5 options listed, then you have to have 2 of them. So, just an example. But let's ensure that we're allowing some flexibility for merchants to achieve that standard of security, but not being so prescriptive with a certain program that may or may not work for everybody. But Steve, please, you raised your hand. I want to hear from you on some of this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. And again, I'm kind of I don't know, I was thinking of it, probably inappropriate term, but we'll just say I'm kind of the outlier here with very much lack of expertise in what you guys do day in and day out. And I appreciate it, and probably have been a customer of most of you either directly or indirectly. So thank you for that. And I get to learn a whole lot of stuff. Couple of quick observations, if I could. Jason, I appreciated your effective but not burdensome comment, and I think in the past I've made some comments that Our goal is to get some best practices that are not overly burdensome, but do actually work on this problem that we have. And I think if you'll recall the statistics from FCIC that Jess went over a little bit earlier, there still is a lot of activity. And actually, we get a list every week that we post into a secure website. And our goal eventually is to have a secure back and forth, if you will, with CPP data and anything else that would help FCIC, as well as near real-time notification of skimmer or compromise point of sale terminals or whatever it might be. So we've got a lot of work to do going forward. We've been working with this for a long time, and I'm not sure how to come up with the elusive best practices that will work for large operators, small operators, whomever. But I would really like to see us move forward. And I think, none of us like regulation, none of us like requirements, and we're not in a position from the financial services side to be pushing for things that we don't understand. But I will tell you that it does not seem to be a significant burden to ask for one of 3 or 4 efforts to secure those pumps, whether it's to get rid of a universal key, which my understanding is that there still are keys out there flying around that open some of the more archaic equipment. I'm hoping that that's been fixed as you guys are spending a whole lot of money for new equipment as you're going forward. Terry pointed out that the EMV technology will immediately disable the equipment if there is an attempted opening of that equipment or some type of a compromise. To me, reading this particular section, it looks like that addresses that. So if somebody is not authorized to get in and there's technology on that pump that's going to shut it down immediately if a certain code is not entered or whatever it is, that works. That's done. I can't discuss or address intelligently the efficacy of tamper-proof seals, but it seems like that is something, to me, that doesn't seem like that is overly burdensome to me, but I don't have to do it every day. So, again, there are a whole lot of issues to deal with. We would like to see best practices, minimal, at least steps taken, because we do believe there still is an ongoing issue with this. And I think the data that Adam has provided from FCIC on the number of skimmers that are discovered on an ongoing basis, and according to him, a number of these are on EMV compliant pumps. So there still is a problem. We can beat this to death, and we may continue to beat it to death, but I would ask that we really work in good faith to try to come up with best practices that are not overly burdensome, that work. And I'm not sure that everybody's going to be happy with them, including us, because these seem like pretty minimal standards to us as we look at them, again, with absolutely no level of expertise. So those are very random stream of consciousness thoughts at lunchtime, so my apologies for that. But we will certainly let our opinions be known, and hopefully do so in good faith, and trying to move forward to solve some potential issues that continue to cost us money.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate that. I think the vast majority of the board members agree. My comments were more towards, let's codify some of the things that merchants are already doing to improve security, and just not be so prescriptive on what those solutions might be. Because I think there's more than one way to skin this cat. And you can have pretty robust security measures in place that that don't include some aspects of security levels. So that's my only concern is again, we want anything we advise the department to put out for comment to be protected for sure. I think we want to make sure that because we had a time period where merchants were kind of on their own to develop tools and processes to improve security, let's not penalize folks for going above and beyond early by being prescriptive with some other approach that was trying to achieve the same.
I had a few things. This is Adam Thompson. As far as the Pulsar skimmer issue, I think verbiage should be in there to not seclude it to a card skimmer, but seclude it to tampering altogether. I think we get a lot of misconstrued of they're in there now stealing credit cards, but they're also tampering with Pulsars and causing a lot of issues in there. And so that's kind of the I guess the security we're looking for, because as we see, they're always taking one step. The criminals are already one step ahead of us. We're trying to stay one step ahead of them. And I think we're seeing that more and more. And so, going into the keys and security and the tampering seals, part of this in here has the logging, and I would say probably the only way the security seals would work is if we do the logging. So I'll just kind of leave y'all with that and see what y'all think on that.
This is Jessica Escobar. As far as the Pulsars, I recognize the concern on that one. As TDLR, we are not currently tasked with any authority related to Pulsars, so we can't prescribe any regulations related to Pulsars, which is why they were not included at this time.
Terry Maxey again, just a couple of follow-ups on it. I'm not a real big fan of the tape. I can tell you that we have found fake tape. The criminals had the tape, and keeping a log of serial numbers it doesn't seem like a big deal, but multiple locations, scores of dispensers and so forth, the idea that you're going to have some kind of reliable evidence of that, that would be usable down the road, I just can't imagine it. But we certainly did it. As our company, I can tell you firsthand, we made the effort. I can also tell you that we found everything from tape that was peeled back and then pushed back on, and then by a casual observer, it looked okay. We can tell you that, we had fake tape put on where that was clearly, upon investigation, not a number that was in our database, but it was kind of the same color. And so a cashier, tasked with doing a pass around the pumps would be fooled. And so I don't think it's very foolproof. I think the best foolproof is having later technology. One of the things that was brought up was that there was still a lot of skimmer complaints. And one piece of information that I think will be helpful is to know how many of those are on newer pumps versus say older pumps that have not been upgraded. Because I would guess, the service company guys are going to know, but I would certainly guess that a bigger majority of those are on older dispensers, particularly as they become fewer and fewer. They almost become, magnets for that kind of activity. The second thing is when you start doing things like operational logs and things, we just need to give some thought to who you hold accountable for that. If the department were to take some action because somebody didn't keep a log, a lot of these locations are leased. For example, as a fuel operator, I might own a location, but lease it to somebody that operates it. So, we're not there to do that. Well, who is responsible? The owner of the pump may not be the person operating the pump. And we've gone through some of these discussions in the past with TCEQ about who's actually responsible for doing the daily stuff. As far as the training, I think that's probably the best idea of any of these. Awareness training has been a big part of email scams, malware, and everything else. And it seems like an abundantly good idea that sort of training be, something that we can do that's easy for to get, cashiers and staff to be able to accomplish. I think is a great idea.
Okay, Jessica Escobar, I'm jumping back in on this one. As far as the rules, I do want to point out that the logs do not require you to maintain serial numbers. It's just that they are checked. So for better or worse, I do want to point that out. In the previous OAG rules, you were required to maintain serial numbers. These do not. It would just require you to have the security tape, which has serial numbers, but you don't have to record them during those checks. The next thing you had the statistics on where they're being installed. Our RPM staff would be able to provide that to you from the anecdotal information that I have seen. You are correct. It's going to be those older dispensers where we're seeing them, and so those ones also without the universal locks. So that's information that I saw a while ago, but I do know that's what I had seen. So that's from what they are tracking and what they have started tracking, particularly around locks. That's the information that we have. Accountable and responsible party information. So when we visit, we would look, and John can confirm this as far as who would be responsible for those logs. You know, we would show up, we would ask for the log. We would look to the responsible party, and correct me if I'm wrong, who registers those devices. So that would be who would need to be preparing those logs or be responsible for somebody following through on those logs. So John, would that be an accurate assessment of who would need to be making sure someone does them?
Correct.
Okay. And I think that should hopefully answer your questions.
What tends to happen a lot in this business is that the owner of a property owns all the equipment and therefore registers the equipment, but somebody else entirely, a completely unrelated party, is leasing the location. So I would say, as a group, I would encourage us to take a look at that. I think that was looked at with TCEQ, UST regulations, for example. You know, you could own an underground tank at a location 100 miles away, but you can't physically be there to stick the tank every day or do the daily over and short log. And so eventually, you know, there has to be somebody that's present, that's actually operating the equipment, that's responsible for that. And to me, that probably ought to be spelled out. The problem is, if it's not somewhat spelled out, then you can't really make somebody do it. You know, the big deal about making them do it is the threat that it's in the regulations. You know, if you as a tenant do not do this, you are violating the law, as opposed to you're just doing something I want you to do, as it were. So I would encourage us to think about that.
I see other folks have their hands up. Just real quickly, not to put the worker members on the spot, but I think some of this discussion happened in October. Was there any discussion about moving the tamper seal requirement under the following section as an option for enhanced security? I think somebody kind of had me on those discussions. Maybe that'll help us take to understand. We're drafting here.
Yeah, this is Wes Nance. Yes, we did actually discuss the tamper seals, and I'm kind of on Terry's side that I'm not a proponent, but at the same time, we had to have specific items that were in this, and that's one of the ones that has been proactive and was helpful in the beginning of the entire skimmer process, if you will. I want to give Terry a few statistics on what the last statistics that I've seen, and I'm going to follow up on what he and Jessica both just said, that the majority of the skimmers that are found are in the older style dispensers. The statistics show that there are still in the state of Texas 28% of the retail locations that have not gone EMV compliant. So that means out of the 100% we have, 72% have met the EMV compliance, and you still have that little more than a quarter of the stations out there that have not done that, and frankly are probably not going to. A lot of them have gone away from credit cards at their dispensers and things like that, but that's the numbers that we look at in our part of the industry every day, that 28% essentially still have the older dispensers. When Jessica put the FCI slide up a few minutes ago, one of the things that I triggered on completely was when she went to the bottom page of that, and you saw that where the skimmers were found in the majority of 2022. I immediately went to and looked at the locations, because that's where a lot of the older dispensers are at. If you look at the numbers where they were, you've got some rural places in Houston that have got a ton of them. And then a lot of the other things where you're rural part of the state. I noticed that Austin and San Antonio, very, very few skimmers were found in either one of those larger cities. And Dallas, I didn't see very many in there for Dallas either. Dallas Fort Worth, which is a huge metroplex. The majority of them were in the rural, more out of the way places. And Adam can probably concur with what I'm saying, though. What we tend to see is the older dispensers that are farther out are the ones that are having the issues. And it doesn't matter. I when we were on the skimmer work group, I told them, I said, it doesn't matter what you do to these pumps, they're still going to break into them. So it's just a matter of whether or not how far we want to push it. I think the real issue is, for skimmers anyway, is back with those older dispensers than it is with the newer EMV. That's all I got for now.
Thanks,
This is
Liz.
Keisha Esqueda. I have I guess a comment. Someone had mentioned owner versus operator, and I guess I would think that the defined term of merchant makes the responsible party for the tampering device the operator, not the owner of the facility. I don't know if anybody else had a thought on that.
Yeah,
And
I did look up the definition of merchant, but there's some additional references to Texas Business and Commerce Code. So I didn't look at it to see if that includes us to look at my.
The definition of merchant is in the handout is being further defined in the PDF that was distributed. And the way that I read that is that the merchant is the operator.
Oh, you're right.
But then just a comment, and maybe I'm just confused, but there are facilities that have updated pumps that they've already done some mitigation to where the skimming practice is less likely to happen. If, what has been done, and is that not reflected in what TDLR is proposing that others do? So are they really asking for those that have made the changes to do something different?
If you're just asking me, my response would be the only thing that sticks out to me as something that's being mandated across the board is the security labels. And I just personally see that as one option among many to improve security. If someone was asking me what I would do if I was king for a day, I would just offer that as an option for a merchant to choose to, increase security, not mandate it.
Yeah.
Because again, I don't think that process works for everyone. And, inherent in its nature, it doesn't prohibit someone from accessing a dispenser, right? It's not a engineering control, so to speak. It shows you potentially when someone has already accessed your dispenser. And it's problematic for some people because, again, it's not an engineering control. It relies on a person or individual to recognize and report that issue. I think there's other options that are available that are more engineering control type controls that allow you to get that same level of security or even more in a different way.
And are those options what's listed in B?
Some of them, yes. I think the only thing that's missing from B that was in the OAG rule and is, something that merchants have done is high definition surveillance systems and bright forecourt lighting, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
But yes, the other things are kind of referenced in B as options. So I think my only
Terry
question would,
did, sorry.
sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you. I was just kind of wanting to hear from the work group if this was kind of discussed and why a decision was made to pull kind of the security levels out and make that a universal mandate. I'm just curious.
This is Adam Thompson. When we discussed this, I don't remember full. I remember going over all this as far as, okay, the tamper. I think the tamper seals went hand in hand. I do remember went hand in hand with the log store, because that's, I mean, it says it right here that if you notice a tamper seal's damaged, then you can go back and look at the log and see the last one in it or when you first noticed it. As far as having one of the three, the extra lock, which I'm assuming is just like a padlock or something that goes over the crin side, or changing the factory locks, and or having the alarm system in there. So when we discussed this, our concern was the ordering of the standard key, the standard Gilbarco key, the Wayne security key. And so then how do you prevent that in turn without replacing the lock and all that? And so it was just, I think it's going to be the obstacle we're going to keep running into until we do something about it. And I think that's why we ended up putting this in on as a draft, just to kind of have more of a discussion. Because when you're in a work group, you're in, 4 or 5 people versus everybody involved, and you're having more say so, more ideas spitballing. So I think, when you get a good idea and you get a good path, you can start really finding the issues. I had a hard time saying anything on it because I don't own gas stations, but working on them, we see how this can be prevented. We see how the logs, we see a lot of our customers on what they do and how they log. And so coming in this, obviously we're not here to put place factors on how do you put log systems in there and how do you hold your people accountable, but we see that they work, and we see that keys in the stores having the key on staff and how they work. And so it's just the idea and the concept moving into a draft. Now, where do you take this, and is it something we remove altogether? So again, we go back and definitely redefine that it is a draft, and is it something that we could move forward on? Is it something, are we trying to overstep our boundaries here and require something? It's just a thought. So I'll leave that in there, and that's kind of the concept behind it all.
If I may jump in, I see Mr. Maxey's hand up, and then I'd like to offer some further discussion or solutions.
You're muted, Terry. Terry, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Coach. I could go on, and I'll try not to. I think in my view of the landscape, we looked at doing locks. I can just tell you personally, it's very expensive. When you start multiplying it by number of dispensers, particularly on larger sites, and then number of locations, it's really expensive. And then a lock will be picked, and or whatever. I mean, or you'll lose a key. There's just all kinds of obstacles to that make it a real prohibitive. It's not an attractive option. The other thing that will tend to happen is the ones that Wes mentioned, the 28%, are the smaller low volume locations, or the ones that are remote, that are at a highway where somebody puts a skimmer in on Tuesday and they come back on Friday and collect the data. Those guys, those operators are probably not doing enough volume to really spend money on the program to they're going to be the ones that are going to be, not have enough people there to do all the logs and everything. I mean, it's just, so it becomes very expensive for the people that have already replaced their pumps, that have already spent hundreds of thousands or more dollars to do all of that. And you may not really be impacting where the real risk is. And I think that's kind of, the thing that I think we need to just make sure we struck the right balance, to.
Harry, what did you do? I mean, what did you guys do differently? You installed something, but it wasn't locks.
On us, we did the tape, and we basically ordered new pumps for every location. you know, a dispenser is basically $20,000. And plus, you know, installation, all that kind of stuff. So our company over the course of about 2 or 3 years replaced all the pumps. You know, Carlos, I'm sure you know, can tell you exactly how expensive pumps are.
What about the new pumps makes them less likely to be tampered with?
Oh, the thing that makes a new pump less likely to be tampered with, it's a dispenser, is because they use the chip and they do not default to reading the mag stripe.
Oh,
So a skimmer
taps?
fundamentally is just stealing magnetic data off the back of a card. The skimmer uses the chip that's embedded. I'm sorry, not the skimmer. The new card readers and the EMV pumps, as long as you had the proper upgrades in your system, which is both the system of software and the dispenser, they read the chip just like when you swipe your card inside a retail store.
Right.
So there's no magnetic information. I mean, that's just low hanging fruit for a thief.
So is it possible to adjust this? I mean, just throwing this out there, if you adjust the section to say, or if you have an updated pump that has the chip tap, that's what I call it, you don't have to do the locks.
So if I can jump in on that, so that was going to be, well, actually, Mr. Winkleman has his hand up, and then I'll go back to the discussion I was going to have with you all.
Yes, I would just like to, first of all, address things on a little bit more of an independent, simplistic basis. I've been an independent, or was previously an independent owner for 40 years. So when I listen to all the comments, especially Mr. Maxley Terry coming back with the comments he just made, he's hitting a lot of things just directly on the head. So a lot of this comes into resources and just the physical financial responsibility of an operator. Okay, so not everybody has the same means, not everybody has the same volume, but one should always want to protect whatever he has. And so, like on the pumps, through the years, operators, large or small, have already burdened a lot of expense with all the new compliances coming down the road. So when you look at what TDLR or our TMQ here is trying to do with the skimmers, or not do, I think we're missing a word in there, is that we should require. I don't think, you know, we're not TCEQ, which in my phrase is like God, okay, to the field world. There is no gray area with this TCEQ. All operators know that they must do this, they must do this, and they must do this, because if on their audits, annually or biannually, when they do their audits, if you're not in compliance, you're fined. And so part of that compliance are people already having to log whether you physically looked at your spill bucket or your containment to see if it's clean or pumped or not. So those independent, those retailers, both small, whether you already should be used to that. So when you jump this up a little bit to the skimmers, one must face that regardless of what you put out there, some are just not going to do it. There are gamblers. They're just going to roll the dice and just hope that they don't ever get taken for the fuel. I think that if anybody has the due diligence, you would want to protect your stuff. Now, all we can do again then is recommend what a retailer should do. That's just my opinion, because you're never going to force anybody to do anything that they're not want to do, whether they have the resources to do it or not the resources. And you know, I thought I'd just weigh that comment out there as an independent, or what I've seen too in other locations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winkleman. Jessica Escobar. So I think Keisha said where I was going. So I think we've had a lot of good discussion this afternoon, which is kind of what we did in October. And I think the consensus is, you know, the rules kind of captured the intent. I think as an explanation, I don't think there was an intention that if you've already got the upgraded dispensers, you should have to take any action at this point. The rule is clearly not written so that to understand it that way. So I think what needs to happen is we need to go back. We need to revise it so that it reflects that. So either if you have that upgraded dispenser, you have EMV, it reflects that, because the intent of the rule is that we understand most of you all have already taken these measures. And so for most merchants across the state, there should be nothing more, and there should be no fiscal impact on them because they've already done these things. So I think we need to go back. We need to look at the language because that didn't reflect what the verbiage, what the industry vernacular is, so that we can fix that. The thing that we probably need to have the bigger conversation on is the seals and where those need to go. And so I think we have to come back as a work group and talk about that in a bigger way. And from there, we may need to meet again as an advisory board to talk about that, what came out of the work group. And so you all may like or not like what the work group came up with, and we'll continue this conversation. I think probably the consensus at this time is we are not ready to move forward. I am not comfortable making a revision and going to the register, even with a revision, knowing what it is that you are wanting, because I don't know. I want to make sure that you are fully on board. So I would ask that you all table this set of rules and let us go back to the drawing board with you all to work with the work group, and then come back to you all at this time. Mary, do you have anything else? Is there anything you need from the board, from me, in making that happen?
Not at this time. Thank you for all of the conversation and for the work group meetings. And I want you all to know that you're not making a final decision for life. So once we get a minimum set of rules, I was kind of messaging Jessica in the background, and I thought, we have all the lofty intentions in the world. We have the best intentions in the world. And sometimes in real life, didn't work out that way. You know what happens when that happens? We come back to the board and we come back to you and we say, or you come back to us and say, this is how we thought that was going to work. It hasn't quite worked out that way. We want to, Jessica, TDLR, we want to look at changing this. We go back to the drawing board and we do it at that time. Don't feel that you have to be perfect in this. You have to be well-intentioned. You have to have the public's interest at heart, which you do, as well as the industry, which you do. And we'll move forward when you're comfortable moving forward to a minimum standard. Then, because it's just not going to be perfect. It's just not going to be. Then when we see that what it looks like in the real world, we'll come back and make those changes at that time. So I just wanted you to be comfortable because you're still a new board. And making decisions that change your profession, kind of hard being the heavy, and you want to do it right, but don't feel great discomfort in that because it's not a forever situation that you're deciding on. It's a step ahead. And if we find out that it's two steps ahead, but half a step back, we'll change that. We'll send it to the commission based on those recommendations, and we can change that. So I just wanted you all to know that.
Okay, thank you, Mary. This is Jason Harris. In that vein, I'm requesting a motion that we delay approval of the draft rules as written.
Motion made. Terry Maxey.
Somebody second?
Second.
We can have a quick vote on that, just to make sure everybody's on board.
I'm sorry. Keisha Esqueda,
Agree.
Terry Maxey,
Yes.
Nathan Winkleman,
Agree.
Terry Hara,
I agree.
Carlos Garza,
I agree.
Jet Stevens. Mr. Stevens left the meeting. Adam Thompson,
Agree.
Wes Nance,
Yes.
and Jason Harris, presiding officer.
Agreed.
Motion passes.
Thank you. But let's talk specifics on what actually needs to happen, if you can, Jessica. Our options are to send this back to the work group to have additional discussions with you on some of these specifics. Would you also entertain individual board members sending you specific, now here's where the kind of boundaries, I want to make sure that we give
Absolutely.
guidance to the board members. So I would think that we would want the information sent to you for consideration to be pretty specific, not kind of, I think we're beyond the time of general concepts and we're getting into the more specific language.
Right.
So I want to frame that in the right way so that you get kind of the input and guidance that you and the work group are looking for. So help me out there.
Yes, Jessica Escobar, and so you're exactly right. That is something I was going to actually mention. So we can certainly do that, and I will direct that through Delia, who sends communications to you. That's probably the cleanest and easiest way. What I can do, knowing that our specific issues are within 2 rules, is I can craft a very specific and directed email to you all, include those couple of sections, and say, okay, here's what we've got. Let me know what works for you, what you want changed, see where you're at, and go from there. So she can get those out to you as you reply directly to Delia, and she copies me. Then I will get that communication as well, bring things in, and we can go from there. And that would probably be the most expeditious way to address this. And I can bring in everything as I redraft before we go back to the work group.
Okay,
That would be
so with
fantastic.
respect to time frame, when do you want those comments back to Delia? When would you want the work group to meet? And when do we expect the advisory board to be able to kind of readdress a new draft?
So, that's, I can of course get that out to you. Mary, you want to
Yeah,
jump in?
I did. Let's take that step by step. So Jason, presiding officer, let's first get these comments and the reason we say to Delia is because we just don't want comments flying all over and something getting lost, right? You send it to one person, it's not cohesive to something else. So Dell is going to be our repository. So let's see if we can. We're at Thursday the 19th. This seems to be really hot on everyone's agenda. How about Friday? What is that? The 26th, 7th? What is that?
Next Friday, is what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Is it a
That is
week to
26th.
kind of and you may all get your comments into her today because it's fresh on your mind. But let's give a week to get comments to Delia. Is that acceptable? Do you think you need more time?
Anybody feel like they need more time than 27?
No, that sounds really good.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's perfect. That's okay.
Okay, so let's get a week to get our comments to Delia. Once we get all of that kind of together and to Jess, then let's give her another week. Jess, is that good, or do you need more time to then review those comments to set up? Because it's going to take a couple to a few weeks. If we're operating in a 2 to 3 week time frame, we can then get a work group scheduled at that time. Your thoughts?
Yeah, this is Jason Harscott. I just implore my fellow board members, that to be specific with your comments. Like I said, I think we're beyond the point of general concepts. We need to get to further down the road. I think we're spinning our wheels by kind of speaking about generalities and rehashing generalities. I think the work group's done an excellent job of getting us to this point. And this is the process, right? We're doing what this advisory board exists for. So that's great news. And again, I always credit the TDLR for having exceptional processes. You don't see this with every state agency, right? They want to get it right. So that's our job. I think we can get there pretty quickly. But please be specific with your conversations.
Just Jason, just real quick, Terry Maxey again. So Jessica, will you guys be sending us? I mean, you want us to send back and say, well, knowing what you're aiming for, we should tweak it like this, or it should kind of that's the kind of specificity you're talking about, right?
Yes, sir. And I'll send you the sections. I'm assuming you're wanting me to send you sections regarding logs and regarding the section that would require you to take action on the dispensers. If you would like me to send you a more broad section or the whole set of rules, I can do that as well. But knowing what it is that we've been discussing this morning, it sounds like those are the two sections specifically that you have issues on. If I see that there's anything else that you all need to focus on, I can do that. I just don't want you to get lost in a giant proposal and waste your time trying to read through it. So I'd like to highlight those and send those to you specifically to look at. From there, I can send it in a Word draft document to you all. You can track your changes, or you can just highlight and say, on this section, I want to do this, or whatever works best for you. I will take those suggested edits graciously.
And this is Adam Thompson. I would, to Keisha and Terry, y'all's good points. I would definitely keep in mind and put in there that it's about leveling the playing field along with consumer protection. So what y'all have done for your gas stations to protect the consumer and leveling the playing field for those who are not doing anything at all, to put it in there and have that terminology that says, if you do this and this kind of suffices in there. So that might label it out. And I would definitely be very, very adamant about, or not adamant, but very clear about that and what you're looking at. Because those were very good ideas that we just slipped through the group. And it wasn't that I don't think wasn't thought of, but it's just a good way of putting it in there and having it to protect those who are being proactive. And that's what it's all about, is protecting the consumer about those being proactive.
Hey, Jessica, this is Jason. Just to be specific on what two sections, I believe it's 97.29 and 97.31 and 0.32, correct?
Correct. I believe those are the two we've been discussing this morning. Let me double check for you. All right. So yes, sir, we're looking at 97.31 device security for motor fuel devices. And then we're looking at 97.32 inspection and maintenance logs. Those are the two that we have extensively discussed this morning. I don't want to say have issues with, but we have been discussing this morning.
Thank you. If you happen to receive a comment about another section, you wouldn't necessarily throw it.
Absolutely. I am happy to hear any comments you have. I will have those in a specific clean document, and you've got the original document. We can resend that one as well, just in case you want to go over it one more time.
Okay. And then the plan is to take that back to the work group and have a more refined discussion.
Yes,
so
sir.
Thank you very much.
We'll take it back to the work.
Thank you to the work group. We're not slamming the work you guys have done, I promise. This is just part of the process. So we really appreciate your efforts. It's not easy.
Jessica, I think you and Wes had a conversation about the service license and what was grandfathered in and what would be required to retest and get a license. I guess I had on 9756 service technician license requirement. On B, the late renewal, if you don't, it says a person may not perform any device maintenance. What we discussed was that you could perform maintenance, you just couldn't report it, being that you're not a licensed technician. So if you expired or you never were, because Class A or Class 5 and Class 6 was the ones grandfathered in as a licensed technician, even though they were just the calibration technician. But now they're classified as a service technician, and those service technicians that were years and years and years with experience that didn't have a Class 5, Class 6 because they never did the calibrations were not grandfathered in. So technically they wouldn't be a serviceman license in the state of Texas. And when we talked about that, it was that they can perform it, they just can't report it because, I mean, obviously they don't have a license number now. So with this, should we change that wording if they're expired? I mean, because to me, you still can perform it, you just can't report it from based on our discussion. Am I missing that or?
So I'm going to play the open government card. This is not on the agenda. This
Okay.
is something we can talk about at a future meeting, because that is well beyond the scope of what we're talking about here. This is something you can talk about with the rules work group, but it is not something that we can discuss further at this time because it's pretty in depth and beyond what we've been discussing this morning. But we can follow up on that.
So I wanted to add, this is Mary Winston again, that this has been a marathon meeting. So everyone has done a really great job, and we have steps that we have to do after the meeting. And so, and Adam, we can also, you can send email through Delia, and we can take that on as well. But I don't want to, because this is going to be on our next agenda item, which is it says recommendation for agenda items of next board meeting. We know what that's going to be. We're going to revisit these rules. Discussion of date, time, and location. Let's defer that until we get these things going. And Delia can then just poll the board as she normally does. And if that is fine with our presiding officer, I can at least give you your afternoons back because you have more work to do outside of this meeting for these issues as well as your dailies. Is that okay, presiding
Yeah.
officer? Okay.
Unless anybody speaks up with any objection, I think that's fine. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. So if we're at that point, please reach out to us through Delia. We will make sure that we get your issues sent to Jess as per the rules and handled in a timely fashion. And presiding officer, you, if that's it, we can we look to you, towards you for adjournment.
Thank you. Appreciate everybody's time. I know it's a lengthy meeting, but it's been very productive. Enjoy the rest of your day, but we are adjourned.